After my adopted mom died, I kept the $350 million inheritance secret just to see who'd treat me right. But after her adopted mother passed, everyone suddenly turned sweet. Hugs, fake tears, and promises of, "We're family." None of them knew she had just inherited $350 million. So she stayed silent. She lived simply, dressed plainly, and waited, just to see who would treat her right, not rich. But soon, the mask slipped. They mocked her, used her, called her charity case. Even her fiancé walked out, saying he couldn't build a future with someone with nothing. Weeks later, their laughter stopped when her name appeared on the news, beside the words, "youngest multi-millionaire philanthropist." Phones started ringing. Doors knocked, but it was too late. This is the story of greed, loyalty, and a test that no one passed. What do you think she did next? Hello family, welcome back. Before we begin, I have a small but heartfelt request, please. Subscribe. Your support is what keeps these stories alive. Every time you click that button, you're helping us share voices that would otherwise be forgotten and stories that deserve to be heard. And in the comments, tell us where you're watching from, because together, we are not just telling stories, we are keeping hope alive. The church smelled of lilies and rain. Rows of black clothes filled the seats, and whispers moved through the air like cold wind. Rachel sat in the front pew, hands shaking on her lap, trying to keep her breathing quiet. Her mother's casket lay just a few feet away, white, perfect, surrounded by roses Judith Williams had always loved. Judith, her mom, the only person who ever made Rachel feel like she belonged. Now she was gone. And suddenly, everyone else remembered Rachel existed. Vivian, Judith's older sister, stood at the podium in a black dress that screamed money and ego. She dabbed at her eyes with a tissue and sighed dramatically. "Judith was such a generous woman," she began, her voice soft but sharp. "Always giving. Always helping those less fortunate. She even took in a child no one else wanted." Her voice lingered on those last words. A child no one else wanted. The crowd nodded. Some looked at Rachel, pity in their eyes. Others smiled politely, pretending not to notice her face turning pale. Rachel's throat tightened. She forced a smile, the kind her mum taught her. Polite, calm, never showing pain. Judith used to say, "Grace makes you stronger than cruelty." But right now, Grace felt like glass splinters in her chest. After the service, everyone gathered in the hall for coffee and cake. The room buzzed with fake laughter. People Rachel hadn't seen in years hugged her too tight, their perfume thick and sweet, their words rehearsed. "You poor thing," one woman whispered, squeezing Rachel's hand. "You must miss Judith so much. She was such a saint to you." "To you, not for you." Rachel nodded, mumbling a quiet thank you, then stepped aside. She could hear them whisper as she walked away. Did Judith ever legally adopt her? I heard she was just fostering her. Either way, she won't get much. Judith was smart. Every sentence cut deeper than the last. Rachel made her way to the food table, hoping to fade into the noise. Her black dress was simple, nothing fancy. She'd bought it on sale a week ago, just before the hospital called. Becca spotted her first. Judith's niece. Perfect smile, perfect hair, and the kind of confidence that came from never being told no. Becca's voice carried across the room. "Rachel! Honey, that dress. It's, brave." She grinned. "Vintage, right?" A few people laughed. Rachel smiled faintly. "Something like that." Becca leaned in, pretending to fix a strand of Rachel's hair. "You really should have called me. I could have lent you something nicer. Judith would have wanted you to look your best." Rachel's jaw tightened. "This is fine," she said softly. Becca shrugged. "Suit yourself." Then she turned to another cousin and whispered loud enough for Rachel to hear. "Mom says she's moving out soon anyway. Maybe she can sell that dress to pay rent." They laughed again. Rachel found a corner by the window, away from the noise. She stared outside where the rain had stopped. Her reflection looked small in the glass. Pale skin, red eyes, hair tied back in a loose bun. Her phone buzzed. A text from Eli. "You okay?" She typed back. "Not really. It's a lot." He didn't respond. She waited, staring at the screen, then finally slipped it back into her purse. He was somewhere in the crowd, talking with the men from Judith's business team, laughing. He hadn't hugged her once today. Later, Vivian approached her, carrying a wine glass and a forced smile. "Rachel," she said, setting the glass down. "I hope you're holding up." Rachel nodded. "I'm trying." Vivian sighed dramatically. "We all are." Judith was a complicated woman. She had a big heart, but she didn't always make the best choices. Rachel frowned. "What do you mean?" Vivian smiled thinly. "Well, she spoiled you, dear. She never wanted you to struggle, but life doesn't work that way. You'll need to be realistic now." Rachel bit her lip. "I'll be fine." Vivian's tone hardened. "Good, because the house, the business, the properties, they're all part of a complicated estate. Lawyers will handle it. You shouldn't expect much." Rachel blinked. "I don't care about the money. I just—" Vivian interrupted, waving a hand. Of course. I just don't want you getting disappointed. You've already taken enough from Judith. Don't make a scene." Rachel's breath caught. "I'm not—" Vivian smiled again, cold and final, and walked away. That night, after everyone left, Rachel stayed behind in the empty house. The silence hurt. Every photo on the wall felt like a memory staring back. She walked into Judith's room, untouched since the day she died. The scent of lavender and old books still hung in the air. On the dresser, Judith's jewelry box sat open. Her pearls, her rings, her favorite silver brooch. Rachel reached for it, then stopped. Something was tucked beneath the box, a small envelope with her name on it. Her hands trembled as she opened it. The handwriting was familiar, elegant looping letters. She read aloud in a whisper, "My Rach, don't tell them what's yours. Let them show you who they are." Tears blurred her eyes. She pressed the letter to her chest. "Mom, I don't understand," she whispered. But deep down, she did. The next morning, she woke to loud voices downstairs. Boxes were being moved, drawers slammed. When she walked into the hallway, Becca was there, wearing Rachel's jacket. "Oh good, you're up," Becca said casually. "We're cleaning out some rooms." "Mom said you're moving out soon." Rachel froze. "What?" Vivian appeared behind her, holding a list. "We're renting the upstairs rooms to a friend of mine." "You can pack your things today." Rachel stared at her. "This is my home." Vivian's expression didn't change. "It was Judith's home. You'll manage. You always find a way to land on your feet, like stray cats do." Rachel felt her chest tighten. "You can't." Vivian raised a hand. "Rachel, please, don't make this harder. Go pack." Rachel walked back to her room, or what used to be her room. The bed was stripped. The closet was empty. Her suitcase sat by the door, half zipped. Someone else had started packing for her. She sat on the bare mattress and stared at the wall until her eyes burned. The house didn't feel like home anymore. It felt like she'd been erased. Eli arrived that afternoon, finally. He didn't come inside, just stood by his car checking his phone. Rachel walked out, suitcase in hand. "You didn't call," she said softly. He sighed. "I've been busy." "With Becca?" she asked, voice trembling. He looked away. "Come on, Rach. Don't start." Rachel stared at him. "I lost my mom, Eli. I'm losing my home. And you're telling me not to start?" He rubbed the back of his neck. "Look, I'm sorry. I can't keep doing this. I can't build a future with someone who doesn't even know where she's going." Her heart stopped. "What does that mean?" He pulled out his phone, typing something. "It means I need stability, ambition. You're a good person, but I can't wait forever for you to figure your life out. Her voice cracked. Eli, I just buried my mum. He nodded. Yeah, and I'm sorry. Really. But I have to think about myself too. A notification pinged on her phone. A text from him. Sorry, I can't keep doing this. You're not the girl I can build with. Before she could respond, Becca's voice floated from the driveway. Eli, you ready? Rachel turned. Becca stood by her car, smiling, her arm already sliding around his. Eli's eyes flickered with guilt, then he turned away. Rachel didn't say another word. She walked down the driveway, dragging her suitcase behind her. The gravel crunched under her shoes like broken glass. By the time she reached the gate, the sky was grey again. The wind was cold, but her face was dry. She pulled Judith's letter from her coat pocket, the one piece of comfort she had left. She unfolded it carefully, her mother's words glowing softly under the cloudy light. My Rach, don't tell them what's yours. Let them show you who they are. She read it twice, 3 times, until the words sank deep into her heart. Then she whispered, I'll wait, Mom. And she walked away from everything. The house, the pain, the people who had called her family. The gate closed behind her with a soft click, like a chapter ending. But she didn't look back. The bus station was nearly empty. The lights buzzed overhead, flickering every few seconds. Rachel sat on a cold metal bench with her suitcase at her feet and her mother's letter clutched in her hands. It still smelled faintly like lavender. She unfolded it again, though she knew every word by heart now. My Rach, don't tell them what's yours. Let them show you who they are. She traced her mom's handwriting with her thumb. She had no idea what her mother meant by, what's yours. But the other part, let them show you who they are. That part was already sinking in. They'd shown her. Loud and clear. The bus came at midnight. Rachel climbed aboard, sat near the back, and stared out the window. The mansion lights disappeared behind the trees. She didn't cry. She thought she would, but the tears just stopped somewhere inside her. When the driver asked where she was headed, she said quietly, Anywhere that's not here. He gave her a kind look and said nothing more. A few hours later, she found herself in a small, quiet town she'd passed through once with Judith years ago. The streets were lined with old shops, most of them closed. The air smelled like coffee and wet pavement. She dragged her suitcase down the street until she found a small motel. The clerk barely looked up as she paid for one night in cash. The room was small, peeling wallpaper, humming fridge, one thin blanket. But it was hers. And for the first time in weeks, no one could throw her out. She sat on the edge of the bed and stared at the ceiling. Judith's voice echoed in her head. The way she used to hum when Rachel couldn't sleep. The way she said, You're my greatest gift. That voice was gone now. The silence left behind was louder than any insult Vivian had ever thrown. Morning came with pale light and a headache. Rachel walked to the diner across the street, the same kind of place Judith used to take her on lazy Sundays. The waitress smiled at her, not because she recognized her, but because she was simply nice. It felt strange. Kindness with no strings. Coffee? The waitress asked. Rachel nodded. Please. She wrapped her hands around the warm cup and watched the rain outside. Her phone buzzed again. Another message from Eli. I didn't mean to hurt you. Becca just gets me in ways you never did. Rachel stared at the screen until the words blurred. Then she deleted it. No reply. No more begging. No more trying to be enough for people who never intended to see her. She spent the next few days trying to breathe, to think, to exist, without Judith's presence hovering over her. Vivian had called once, leaving a voicemail. Rachel, dear, I hope you're doing all right. The lawyer's been in touch. We'll handle everything fairly. Just don't get any ideas, okay? Judith's estate was complicated. Fairly. That word burned like acid. Rachel deleted the voicemail too. On the third night, she pulled out her old laptop and looked up the law firm's number, the same one Judith had trusted for years. When the lawyer, Mr. Sterling, answered, his voice was calm and warm, like someone who actually remembered her as a person. "Rachel," he said gently, "I was wondering when you'd call." "I didn't know if I should," she said. "I don't want to start a fight with Vivian." A pause. "Your mother was a very deliberate woman," he said. "She left specific instructions for you." "Private ones," Rachel frowned. "Instructions?" "Yes, and a sealed envelope. She wanted you to have both, but she also wrote that you'd know when it's time." Rachel's chest tightened. "She said that in her letter too." "I see." He hesitated. "Would you like to come in and talk, Rachel? We can review her wishes together." Rachel looked around her tiny motel room, the flickering light, the peeling walls, the silence. "Yes," she said quietly. "I think I'm ready." The next morning she took a bus to the city. The law office was on the top floor of a glass building, the kind of place she'd visited often with Judith as a child. Mr. Sterling greeted her at the door, older now, but still kind-eyed. He led her into a quiet conference room where a single folder sat on the table. "This is from your mother's estate," he said, "but before you open it, there's something you should know." Rachel's stomach twisted. "What is it?" He folded his hands. "The will itself hasn't been made public yet. Your mother instructed us to withhold it for a short period, at least 6 months, or until you decide to make it known." Rachel blinked. "Why would she do that?" He smiled faintly. "She said you'd understand when you saw how people behaved." Rachel let out a shaky laugh. "She knew them better than I thought." Mr. Sterling nodded. "She did. Judith trusted very few people. But she trusted you completely." Rachel swallowed hard. "And what did she leave for them?" He hesitated. "They'll receive very little. A few sentimental items, some minor accounts. But the main estate, the businesses, the investments, all of it belongs to you." Her breath caught. "All of it?" He nodded. "All of it." Rachel sat frozen, her mind spinning. Her whole life she'd been told she was the charity case, the lucky one, the unwanted one. And now, this. Her mom had known. She'd planned this test. Rachel leaned back in her chair, whispering, "She wanted me to wait. She wanted me to see the truth." Mr. Sterling watched her carefully. "Rachel, you don't have to do anything yet. You can live quietly for a while. When you're ready, we'll make the public announcement." Rachel nodded slowly. "Not yet," she said. "I want to see who they really are, without money in the picture." He smiled. "Just like your mother." That night, Rachel walked through the city streets, the letter still tucked in her coat pocket. Her reflection in every shop window looked different now, still small, still hurting, but something behind her eyes had changed. Not anger, not yet, but something close. A few weeks passed. Vivian called again, this time furious. "Rachel, you've been avoiding us. Becca says she saw you in town. What are you up to?" Rachel kept her voice calm. "I'm working." Trying to figure things out, Vivian scoffed. "Working? Doing what exactly?" "At a diner." "A diner?" Vivian repeated, laughing coldly. "So you finally learned to earn something. Good. Maybe now you'll understand what it means to be responsible?" Rachel didn't reply. Vivian continued, her tone dripping with fake concern. "You know, Judith spoiled you. She made you believe you were someone important, but we both know how she was, sentimental, impulsive. You shouldn't rely on her charity forever." Rachel closed her eyes, gripping the phone tightly. "I never asked for her charity." Vivian's voice sharpened. "Oh, please. You wouldn't have survived a week without her. You should be grateful she didn't give you away when she realized what a mistake you were." Rachel hung up before the tears came. Then she opened her drawer, pulled out Judith's letter, and read it again. slowly this time, letting every word settle. My Rach, don't tell them what's yours. Let them show you who they are. A small, trembling smile touched her lips. They're showing me, Mom, she whispered. They really are. That night she sat by the diner window after her shift, sipping coffee while the rain tapped on the glass. The world outside felt smaller, but clearer. For the first time she realized she wasn't powerless. She had something they didn't. Patience. They had shown her their greed, their cruelty, their laughter when she fell. And she had watched, quietly, remembering everything. As she packed up to leave, Noah, the guy from the kitchen, wiped down the counter and glanced at her. You okay? He asked. She smiled faintly. I will be. He nodded. If you ever need someone to talk to, I make good coffee and bad jokes. Rachel laughed softly. That sounds perfect. When she got back to her motel, she opened her suitcase. It looked emptier than ever. A few clothes, a photo of her and Judith, and the letter. She sat on the floor, holding the photo. Judith was smiling, arms around her, proud and warm. Rachel whispered, You were right, Mom. They showed me who they are. Her eyes filled with tears, but this time she didn't hide them. She let them fall, slow, quiet, cleansing. When the crying stopped, she took a deep breath and stood. She folded Judith's letter carefully, placed it in her bag, and whispered to herself, I'll wait, Mom, but not forever. Then she turned off the light and lay down. Outside, the rain kept falling, but inside, for the first time in weeks, Rachel felt something that almost resembled peace. The kind that comes right before a storm. If you haven't subscribed yet, I'd love you to join our community by hitting the subscribe button. Through our stories, we build hope and give future to children and women abused all over the world. Motivate us by subscribing to hitting the subscribe button and turning on your notification bell. Also, let us know in the comments where you are watching us from and how this story hit home for you. The walls in Rachel's new apartment were the color of old tea. Paint flaked near the ceiling, and the single window faced an alley filled with trash cans and humming streetlights. It smelled faintly of bleach and loneliness. Still, it was hers. No Vivian, no Becca, no cold smiles or whispered insults, just silence and space to breathe. She unpacked slowly. 3 shirts, 2 pairs of jeans, 1 framed photo of Judith, and a shoebox with the letter that had become her anchor. Her mother's words whispered in her head whenever the pain started pressing too hard. Don't tell them what's yours. Let them show you who they are. Judith's trust fund, the fortune, the companies, all quietly waiting. The world thought she was broke, and she wanted to keep it that way. For now. Days blurred into weeks. Rachel called Vivian once just to check if the lawyers had sent any paperwork that needed her signature. Vivian didn't answer. Then came a message hours later. Busy with the charity event, dear. Hope you're getting by. Maybe try that cafe job you mentioned. The text ended with a thumbs up emoji. Rachel stared at it for a long time before locking her phone and setting it face down. The diner across the street was hiring. She tied her hair back, borrowed a clean shirt from the motel laundry rack, and walked in. The manager, a short woman named Carol, asked if she could handle long shifts. Yes, Rachel said. I just need work. Carol glanced at her hands. You ever wait tables before? Rachel hesitated. I can learn fast. Carol shrugged. You start tomorrow. Don't be late. That night, Rachel fell asleep to the sound of rain hitting the thin roof, the kind of sound Judith used to call city lullabies. The diner job was hard, her feet hurt, her wrists burned, her fingertips cracked from scrubbing plates in hot water. But she showed up every morning, quiet and steady. That's where she met Noah. He worked the grill, tall, warm eyes, the kind of calm presence that made chaos feel smaller. He noticed the bruises on her knuckles one afternoon while she wiped down a counter. You okay? He asked, flipping a pancake with one hand. Rachel blinked. Yeah. Why? He nodded toward her hand. Looks painful. Oh, just cleaning stuff. He smiled faintly. You clean like you're trying to erase something. Rachel laughed under her breath. Maybe I am. Noah didn't ask questions. He just slid her a cup of coffee when the shift ended and said, "On the house." For the fighter. It was the first genuine kindness she'd felt in months. Across town, Vivian was making sure no one forgot Judith's name, or rather her version of it. Billboards for the Judith Williams Memorial Charity Luncheon covered the city. Vivian's face appeared beside her sister's in every photo, smiling proudly like a saint. Rachel stared at one poster while waiting for the bus to work. Judith's face looked peaceful beside a tagline that read, "Helping those who need it most." Rachel almost laughed, because she was one of those people now. The luncheon was public, and anyone could attend with a small donation. Rachel saved up for a week, bought the cheapest ticket, and decided to go, quietly, no announcement, just to see how deep Vivian's act would go. The hotel ballroom sparkled, crystal chandeliers, white tablecloths, trays of champagne. Rachel wore her plain grey dress, hair in a bun, blending with the catering staff more than the guests. Vivian was at the center, glowing in a red gown. Becca stood beside her in sequins, laughing as cameras flashed. When Rachel approached to say hello, Vivian's smile faltered for half a second, then returned, tight and brittle. "Oh," she said sweetly. "You made it." Rachel nodded. "I wanted to support Mom's cause." Vivian's gaze flicked to her shoes. "How thoughtful." She looked around, and then leaned closer, her voice dropping to a whisper. "Actually, since you're here, could you help the servers for a bit? We're short-staffed. Just pass drinks, dear, if you want to be useful." The words hit harder than Rachel expected. Still, she smiled. Sure. She spent the next hour carrying trays, weaving through laughter and perfume. People she'd known her whole life looked right past her. Some gave her pitying smiles. Others just ignored her completely. Becca clinked a glass at the podium later that night. She gave a speech about continuing Aunt Judith's mission of generosity. Cameras flashed as she said, "We must always give back to the less fortunate." The next day, Becca's photos flooded social media, her in a designer dress beside charity banners captioned, "Giving back to the less fortunate." Rachel's stomach dropped when she saw the comments. Becca had tagged her in one. At Rachel_Williams, our family's inspiration to stay humble. Charity case. Blessed hundreds of likes, laughing emojis, a few comments asking, "Is that the adopted one?" Rachel closed the app. Her hands trembled too much to hold the phone steady. That night she came home late from work. Noah was locking up the diner. "You look beat," he said. "I'm fine," she lied. He studied her face. "You don't have to pretend here." "Everyone's got a story," Rachel gave him a tired smile. "Mine's just a little ugly right now." "Ugly stories make the best comebacks," Noah said, tossing his apron over his shoulder. "Coffee tomorrow?" "I'll save you a cup." She nodded. "Yeah, I'd like that." The following week she received an unexpected call. Ryan, Becca's brother. She hadn't heard his voice in months. "Rach." "Hey, cousin, it's been forever," he said, too cheerful to be real. Rachel hesitated. "What do you want, Ryan?" He laughed. "Wow, straight to business. Look, we all feel bad about how things went down, especially Mom. She can be intense." "Intense?" Rachel repeated. "She threw me out." "Yeah, well, grief makes people weird." His tone softened. "Why don't you come to dinner this Friday?" My treat. No drama. Just family. Rachel's first instinct was to hang up. But curiosity, or maybe hope, stopped her. "Okay," she said quietly. "Dinner. Great. I'll text you the address. And hey, dress nice. It's a fancy place." Friday came too fast. She wore her cleanest dress, brushed her hair, and took a bus across town. The restaurant was glossy marble and dim lighting, the kind of place Judith used to take her for birthdays. Ryan waved her over, smiling wide. There she is. You look great. Thanks, Rachel said, sitting down. You didn't have to do this. Of course I did, he said, signaling the waiter. We're family. We should stick together. For a brief moment, Rachel almost believed him. They talked about Judith, about the old days, about how family misunderstandings happened all the time. Then her vision blurred. Her head started to feel heavy. Ryan, what's in this drink? She asked, blinking hard. He smiled too easily. Relax. Just wine. The next thing she remembered was stumbling out of a cab near her apartment, her phone missing and her bag half open. By morning, her world was on fire. Private messages, screenshots of her texting Judith before the funeral, things about how scared she'd been, were all over social media. The captions were cruel. The orphan still begging for pity. Some people never stop milking sympathy. The family group chat lit up with laughing emojis. Becca's voice memo came next. You really shouldn't drink so much, Rach. Makes you sloppy. Rachel dropped her phone. It hit the floor and cracked. She stared at the broken screen until her reflection split down the middle, like her life had. That night, Vivian posted a long message online with a photo of herself holding a framed picture of Judith. My dear sister would be heartbroken to see how ungrateful some people have become. All she ever wanted was to help others, yet her kindness was abused by those she raised. Becca commented underneath with a single laughing emoji. Rachel scrolled through every comment. Strangers praising Vivian, calling her strong, calling Rachel spoiled, lazy, attention-seeking. Her chest felt like fire. Hopelessness, rage, and under it, a small, sharp edge of resolve. She realized her silence wasn't protecting her anymore. It was giving them permission. By dawn, Rachel stood in front of the city skyline, watching the first light crawl between buildings. Her phone buzzed with messages she didn't read. She whispered to the empty air, "You wanted to see who they are, Mom. Now I've seen enough." She turned and started walking. Each step felt heavier, but steadier. The rain began to fall again, soft, steady, cleansing. By the time she reached Mr. Sterling's office, her clothes were soaked, but her face was dry. She stepped into the lobby, the marble floor shining beneath her feet. The receptionist looked up. "Miss Williams, do you have an appointment?" Rachel's voice was calm, low, unshakable. "No," she said, "but tell Mr. Sterling I'm here." Moments later, he appeared at the doorway, surprised. "Rachel, is everything all right?" She met his eyes. "It's time," she said quietly. "Release everything." The rain followed Rachel all the way into Mr. Sterling's office. She left wet footprints on the marble floor as she walked, calm but burning inside. Mr. Sterling closed the door behind her. "Rachel, you don't look well." "What happened?" Rachel sat across from him, water dripping from her coat sleeves. "Everything happened," she said quietly. "They've dragged my name through the mud. They've humiliated me in public. They think I'm nothing. Let's show them what nothing really means." He studied her for a moment, the kind way older people do when they see too much pain in someone too young. "Are you sure? Once this is public, there's no going back. You'll be the center of it all." Rachel nodded slowly. "My mother didn't raise me to hide. She raised me to know my worth. It's time everyone else learns it too." Mr. Sterling opened a locked drawer and placed a sealed folder on the desk. "Judith's will," he said. "When I press send, the news breaks within the hour." Rachel took a deep breath. Her hands shook slightly, but her voice was steady. "Send it." He nodded once, typed something on his computer, and hit the key. The faint whoosh of an outgoing email filled the silence. Just like that, everything changed. By the time Rachel left the office, the rain had stopped. Her phone was vibrating non-stop. Notifications flooded the screen. She opened one news alert at random. Exclusive. Late billionaire Judith Williams leaves. Entire $350 million. Fortune to adopted daughter. Underneath it, a photo of her. One she hadn't even known existed. Smiling beside Judith at a charity event years ago. Rachel stared at it. Half stunned, half numb. The headline repeated in her head until it became a heartbeat. They know now. Across the city, chaos erupted. Vivian's phone rang non-stop. Reporters camped outside her house. Becca's social media turned into a battlefield of comments. So she was the heir all along? Didn't you call her a charity case? Funny how family disappears until money shows up. Vivian tried to spin it immediately. She posted a statement that read, "Our family is thrilled for Rachel and proud of Judith's lasting legacy. We have always supported her as one of our own." Rachel almost laughed when she saw it. One of our own. Just 2 weeks ago, Vivian had called her a mistake. Noah found her that evening, sitting outside the diner on the curb, staring at her phone. "You're trending," he said gently. Rachel looked up, eyes dazed. "Yeah. So I've heard." He sat down beside her, elbows on his knees. "How's it feel?" "I don't know yet," she said. "Kind of like watching a fire. You know it's dangerous, but you can't look away." He nodded. "Want me to get you something?" "Coffee." She smiled faintly. "You always know what to offer." He stood. "2 sugars, right?" "Always." When he walked inside, Rachel's phone buzzed again. This time a call from Becca. For a second she considered ignoring it. Then she answered. "Rachel!" "Oh my God." Becca's voice was sugary sweet. "I just saw the news. I can't believe it. We're so happy for you." Rachel said nothing. Becca hesitated. "Listen, there's been so many misunderstandings. Mom's just been under stress, you know? She didn't mean all those things she said." Rachel finally spoke. "Becca, do you even hear yourself?" Becca laughed nervously. "Come on, Rach. Don't be dramatic. We're family. Family fights. But we're here for you now, okay? Always have been." Rachel could almost hear Vivian coaching her from the background. She took a slow breath. "You really want to help me?" "Of course," Becca said quickly. "Then stop talking," Rachel said, "and stop lying." The line went silent. Then Rachel hung up. A few hours later, Rachel's name was everywhere. News anchors debated her inheritance on TV. Online headlines fought for clicks. Orphan to heiress, Rachel Williams' quiet fortune. Billionaire's adopted daughter stuns relatives. Everyone had an opinion. No one really knew her story. Noah dropped a coffee on her table and sat across from her again. "You don't seem happy," he said softly. Rachel stared out the window. "Because it doesn't feel like winning. It feels like exposure." He nodded. "Still, the truth's out there now. They can't twist it anymore." She looked at him, a small, tired smile flickering. "You think people stop twisting just because they get caught?" By the next day, the mask had completely slipped. Vivian showed up at Rachel's apartment uninvited, wearing sunglasses and pearls like a movie star avoiding paparazzi. "Rachel, darling," she said the second the door opened. "I just wanted to check on you." "You must be overwhelmed." Rachel stepped aside silently. Vivian sat down without asking, her perfume filling the room. "You know, the media can be cruel. We should present a united front. For Judith's sake. We can hold a family press conference, maybe." Rachel crossed her arms. "For Judith's sake, or yours?" Vivian's smile didn't waver. "For both. You know, perception matters. People are already asking questions about you, about where you came from, how Judith found you." "Enough," Rachel interrupted. "You don't get to use her name anymore." Vivian blinked, caught off guard. "Excuse me?" "You spent years belittling her choices. Now you want to wear her memory like a crown?" No. Vivian's voice hardened. You think money makes you better than me? Rachel tilted her head. No, money doesn't change character. It just exposes it. For the first time, Vivian's mask cracked. You ungrateful! Ungrateful! Rachel's voice rose, sharp but calm. For what? For being treated like trash under your roof. For being your family's favorite joke. Vivian stood up, flustered. You'll regret talking to me like that. You may have money, but you'll always be the maid's niece. Rachel smiled faintly. Maybe. But at least the maid had more dignity than you ever will. Vivian's face turned pale. She left without another word. That night, Rachel sat at her kitchen table with the lights off, listening to the city hum. Her phone lit up again, now with messages from strangers. Some called her inspiring, others called her a fraud. Everyone wanted a piece of her. She thought about how hard she'd scrubbed dishes just a week ago, trying to survive. About how Becca had mocked her, Vivian had erased her, Ryan had humiliated her. Now they were crawling back, pretending. For the first time since Judith's death, Rachel let herself smile, not out of happiness, but clarity. Now she saw the full picture. The money didn't corrupt them, it exposed them. And now that they were exposed, she finally had power. 2 days later, she met Mr. Sterling again to sign documents, transferring Judith's companies officially under her name. When he handed her the last page, he said quietly, Judith would be proud. You've handled this with grace. Rachel smiled faintly. Grace takes practice. He chuckled softly. And revenge takes patience. Rachel's eyes met his. Good thing I've learned both. She returned to the diner that evening just to say goodbye. Carol hugged her awkwardly. You sure you're leaving? You were good help. Rachel smiled. I'm sure. Noah wiped his hands on a towel, looking at her with quiet pride. So what now? She hesitated. Now? I build something new, something Judith would have been proud of. He nodded. Just promise me you won't forget us little people when you're rich and famous. Rachel laughed softly. Never. You treated me like a person when no one else did. Noah grinned. That's kind of my thing. The next morning, the world felt different. Rachel woke up to noise, her phone buzzing non-stop, notifications blinking like sirens. She reached for it reluctantly, still half asleep. Then she saw it. Breaking news. Young woman inherits $350 million fortune from late billionaire Judith Williams. Beneath the headline was her photo, smiling beside Judith years ago at a charity gala. She remembered the night clearly. Judith had whispered, "Smile for the cameras, honey. One day, you'll see why this matters." Now she understood. Rachel scrolled down. Every news outlet had picked up the story. Her name was trending. Her face was everywhere. Twitter, Instagram, TV, Rachel Williams, hidden heir, billionaire daughter. People were already calling her the mystery daughter and the quiet philanthropist. She stared at the screen, numb. It didn't feel like power. Not yet. It felt like exposure. Her phone rang again, then again, then again. She didn't need to check the name. She already knew. Eli. He'd called 27 times already. She let it ring. Then came a message from Becca. OMG, Rachel. I just saw the news. We're so proud of you. You know we were only joking all those times. You get our humor, right? Let's celebrate soon. Rachel stared at the message for a long moment, then laughed softly. A hollow, bitter sound. She turned the phone off and set it face down. By noon, there was a knock at her door. Rachel opened it to find Becca. Her perfect makeup now streaked from fake tears. Rachel! Becca cried, rushing forward like an actress mid-scene. I can't believe I had to find out from the news. We're family. We should have been there for you. Rachel said nothing. Becca kept talking, her words tumbling over each other. You know how Mom can be. And Ryan, he was just being stupid. We all were. You know how we joke around. Rachel finally cut her off. Her voice was quiet, almost gentle. A joke is only funny when everyone's laughing. Becca froze. Rachel stepped aside. You can come in if you want. Becca looked relieved and nodded quickly, stepping into the small apartment. Her eyes darted around, taking in the plain furniture, the faded curtains. Wow, this is cozy, she said carefully. I can't believe you've been living here. Why didn't you say anything? We would have helped. Rachel raised an eyebrow. You mean the way you helped last time? Becca looked away. We were just jealous. You had Mom's love. She adored you. She was my mother, Rachel said simply. Not yours to give or take. Becca's face tightened. You know what? You don't have to be mean. I'm trying. No, Rachel said. You're trying to fix your reputation. That's different. Becca opened her mouth to speak, but Rachel's phone buzzed again. This time 42 missed calls. Eli's name filled the screen. Becca noticed and smirked nervously. Looks like someone's finally realizing what he lost. Rachel smiled faintly. Lost? She said. He never had me. That evening, Vivian showed up. Unlike Becca, she didn't bother pretending to cry. She just stood at the door, holding flowers and wearing a smile too tight to be sincere. Rachel, darling, she said smoothly. You look radiant. I'm so happy for you. Truly, Rachel didn't move. How did you find me? Vivian laughed. Oh, please. You think you can hide from family? Besides, we need to talk. The reporters won't stop calling me, and we need to get ahead of the story. We? Rachel repeated. Vivian stepped closer, lowering her voice. You don't understand how this world works. There's power in presentation. If we stand together, people will see unity. That's how we protect Judith's image. Rachel's face stayed calm. You mean your image? Vivian's smile twitched. Rachel, dear, I know you're emotional right now, but you need to be smart. You're in over your head. You've never run a company, never managed money. You need guidance. Family guidance. Rachel leaned against the doorframe. And what's your guidance worth exactly? Vivian's eyes gleamed. Let me handle the public side. The press loves a good redemption story. A family reunited, love conquering greed. We'll do interviews, photo ops. Rachel interrupted. You want to use me? Vivian blinked. I want to help you. Rachel tilted her head slightly. You called me a mistake. You threw me out of my home. You let your daughter humiliate me. And now that you know what I'm worth, you suddenly remember I exist. That's not help, Vivian. That's hunting. Vivian's lips parted, but Rachel's expression didn't waver. Get out, she said quietly. Vivian froze. Excuse me? Leave, Rachel repeated, before I remember every single thing you ever said to me and start recording. For a second, Vivian's mask fell. Her face twisted with fury. You think this makes you powerful, she hissed. You're nothing without Judith. You're nothing but the orphan she bought to hurt me. Rachel's voice was calm, almost too calm. You might want to get your facts straight before speaking to the press. Vivian frowned. What do you mean? Rachel's eyes flicked to the flowers in her hand. You said Judith bought me. Funny, because she's the one who bought your debt, twice. Every house, every car, every charity event you've thrown since 2012. Paid for by her forgiveness. Vivian's mouth fell open. You're lying, Rachel smiled softly. Am I? Vivian's silence was answer enough. Judith saved you, Rachel continued, her tone soft but cutting, and you repaid her by destroying what she loved most. Vivian's throat tightened. You'll regret this, she whispered. Rachel's smile didn't fade. Maybe. But at least I'll regret it from my own house, not the one my sister bought for me. Vivian's eyes filled with fury. but she said nothing more. She turned sharply, slamming the door behind her as she left. Rachel stood still for a moment, her heart pounding, her hands trembling, not from fear, but release. That night, Rachel sat at her small table, staring at the letter again. The same words. Don't tell them what's yours. Let them show you who they are. Her mother had been right. She'd watched them reveal themselves, greedy, selfish, cruel. And now, it was time for her to reveal something too. Not her wealth, not her anger, but her truth. She pulled out her phone and sent a message to Mr. Sterling. I need access to the mansion. I have something to take care of. His reply came instantly. Of course. It's still yours. Do you want staff? No, she typed. I'll invite my own. She sat back and exhaled slowly. Her plan was already forming. No shouting, no screaming, no violence. Just honesty. Brutal, unfiltered, undeniable. She would invite every single one of them. She'd serve dinner, just like Judith used to. And this time, the truth would be the main course. The next day, she walked through the old mansion gates for the first time since Vivian had thrown her out. The air smelled like memories. Lavender and oak, just like Judith's favorite candles. Rachel's footsteps echoed across the marble floor. The staff, reinstated under Mr. Sterling's orders, greeted her with warmth. Welcome home, Miss Williams. Rachel smiled softly. Thank you. She wandered through the rooms, her fingers grazing the piano keys, the bookshelves, the portraits. Everything was just as her mother had left it, frozen in time. In the dining room, she stopped and stared at the long mahogany table where the family used to gather. Vivian at the head, pretending authority, Becca scrolling through her phone, Ryan making cruel jokes, Judith watching quietly, never letting on how much it hurt her. Now, Rachel stood there alone, her reflection glinting in the polished wood. It's my turn now, she whispered. She picked up her phone and started typing invitations. Dinner at the Williams estate. One night only, family only, dress nicely. There will be no second invitation. She sent it to Vivian, Becca, Ryan, and yes, even Eli. Then she sat back and waited. By evening her phone buzzed with replies. Becca, OMG, yes, can't wait. Miss the mansion so much, Ryan. Is this a trap? Lowell, okay, I'm in. Eli, please, let's talk. I made a mistake. Vivian, of course, darling. It's about time we put things behind us. Rachel smiled faintly. Perfect. Everything was falling into place, exactly the way Judith used to plan her charity events. Quietly, precisely, with grace that masked fire. The night of the dinner came fast. The mansion glowed again. Lights in every window, candles flickering on the grand staircase. The same scent of lavender Judith had always loved drifting through the air. Rachel stood at the top of the stairs, wearing a black dress that was simple but commanding. Her hair was tied back, her eyes calm and unreadable. It had been months since she'd stepped foot in this house, and now every room felt like it was watching. The portraits of her and Judith hung on the walls, silent witnesses. The staff moved quietly, setting the table for 6. Crystal glasses, silver cutlery, Judith's fine china. Everything gleamed. It looked like a reunion. It was really an execution. One by one they arrived. Vivian came first, draped in pearls and false humility. Rachel, she said, smiling too wide. You look stunning, dear. The house feels alive again. Rachel kissed her cheek lightly, her expression polite but distant. Thank you for coming. Next was Becca, bursting in with perfume, nerves, and fake excitement. Oh my God, Rach! It's been forever. This is so beautiful. She hugged Rachel too tightly. Glad you could make it, Rachel said simply. Ryan arrived late, of course, his smirk already in place. Didn't think you'd actually invite me after that little dinner fiasco. Rachel's tone didn't change. People deserve a chance to apologize. He laughed. Sure. I brought an appetite. Eli was last. He stood in the doorway for a long moment, eyes scanning her from head to toe. You look incredible, he said softly. Rachel smiled, not kindly, not cruelly. You always liked what you couldn't have. He flinched but said nothing. Dinner began quietly. The table shimmered under chandelier light. The sound of forks and glasses echoed against the silence. For a while no one spoke, until Vivian finally broke it. It's so wonderful to see you back here, she said. Judith would have loved this. Family together again. Rachel tilted her head. Would she? Vivian hesitated. Of course. She always wanted peace. Rachel's smile didn't reach her eyes. Peace? Is that what you call what you gave her? The table stiffened. Ryan cleared his throat. Come on, Rach. Don't ruin dinner with drama. We're here to move forward, yeah? Rachel looked at him, her tone icy. You mean move away from accountability? Ryan laughed nervously. Same thing. Becca chimed in, forcing a laugh. Let's just enjoy the night. It's been hard on everyone. Rachel leaned back in her chair, her voice soft and even. Harder on some than others. Vivian sighed. Rachel, dear, you've made your point. You've won. You got everything. Can't we just start fresh? Rachel stared at her for a long moment. You think I did this to win? Vivian frowned. Didn't you? Rachel shook her head slowly. No, I did this to remember. She nodded toward the far wall. A projector screen unrolled, quiet and deliberate. Every head turned. Rachel pressed a button on her phone. The lights dimmed. At first there was only sound, voices, familiar ones. Vivian's, sharp and mocking. Becca's laughter. Ryan's cruel jokes, Eli's words. She's pathetic. Lucky Judith pitied her. She'll be gone in a month. I need someone who actually has a future. The room froze. Rachel's heart didn't race. It beat steady, calm, exact. Then came photos, screenshots, leaked messages, posts mocking her clothes, her job, her pain. Videos of them laughing at the funeral. Every sound filled the room like smoke. Becca's face drained of color. Rachel held up a hand. Don't. You had your turn to talk. Vivian slammed her glass down. This is disgusting. How dare you invade our privacy? Rachel's voice was ice. Privacy? You made my pain public. You called me a charity case online. You made me your family's entertainment. Eli spoke next, his voice low. Rachel, I made mistakes, but I loved you. I swear I did. Rachel turned to him, eyes calm. You loved the version of me you thought was beneath you. You loved how it made you feel superior. He flinched. She looked around the table. You all taught me what family isn't, she said softly, and I learned fast. The last video played, a clip from the charity luncheon. Becca at the microphone smiling, saying, we must always give back to the less fortunate. Then the photo, Becca's caption tagging Rachel, @Rachel_Williams, our family's inspiration to stay humble. Charity case, Diov blessed. When the lights came back on, no one spoke. Rachel stood slowly. Dinner's over. Vivian pushed her chair back violently. You've humiliated us enough. You're not family. You never were. You were just the orphan Judith bought to hurt me. Rachel's voice stayed even. You're right about one thing. Judith bought something, but it wasn't me. Vivian's face twisted. What are you talking about? Rachel stepped closer. She bought your debt. Twice. Every car, every house, every charity gala you've ever thrown, funded by the woman you called foolish for adopting me. Vivian's breath hitched. You're lying. Rachel smiled faintly. You said the same thing when she told you to love me. And we both know how that turned out. Becca began to cry quietly. Ryan looked like he wanted to disappear. Eli just stared at the floor. Rachel walked toward the door and opened it wide. "You can all go now. You've had your feast." No one moved at first. Then, one by one, they stood. Vivian's heels clicked furiously against the marble. Becca covered her face. Ryan muttered something under his breath. Eli lingered for a moment longer. He whispered, "I really did love you." Rachel met his eyes. "No, you loved control. This isn't love. It never was." He nodded once, broken, and left. The door closed softly behind them, the echo swallowing their last traces. Rachel stood alone in the quiet that followed. The table was still set, the wine still half full. The candles flickered. It didn't feel like victory. It felt like silence after a storm. She let out a long breath she hadn't realized she'd been holding. Mr. Sterling stepped into the room from the side hallway. He'd been there all along, silent, watching, protecting her privacy. He held a small, sealed envelope. "Judith said to give you this when the truth stops hurting," he said gently. Rachel took it with trembling hands. "I don't know if it ever stops." He smiled softly. "Maybe it doesn't have to. Maybe it just changes." Rachel looked down at the envelope, her name written in Judith's looping handwriting. She opened it carefully. Inside was a letter and several old papers, yellowed with age. She began to read. "My Rachel, if you're holding this, then you've already faced them, and yourself. You were born into betrayal, but you were raised with love. Don't let them steal your light twice. There is still more to know, and I trust you to handle it with the strength I saw in you every day. Mom." Rachel's breath caught. Her hands shook. She read the line again and again. "You were born into betrayal, but you were raised with love." A tear slid down her cheek. She wasn't a mistake. She was a choice. Rachel folded the letter back carefully and held it to her chest. Outside, the sky had cleared. The moonlight spilled through the tall windows, soft and forgiving. Judith had been gone for months, but in that moment, Rachel could almost hear her voice again. Gentle, steady, proud. "You did good, my girl." Rachel smiled through her tears. "I tried, Mom." She looked back at the empty table, the wine glasses, the mess, the silence. Her revenge hadn't healed her, but it had freed her. Now only one thing remained. The truth about where she came from. She looked down at the papers still in the envelope. A birth certificate, a name she didn't recognize, an address. Her heart beat faster. There was still one last secret waiting in the shadows of her past. She wiped her eyes, stood tall and whispered, "All right, Mom. I'm ready." The lights dimmed behind her as she walked out of the dining room, the letter pressed against her heart. The house, her house, stood quiet again. But this time it didn't feel empty. It felt alive. The letter trembled in Rachel's hands. Judith's handwriting danced across the page, strong even through the faded ink. But beneath it, something else was folded. More papers, heavier, older. Her breath caught. Adoption records, certificates, signatures. She turned on the lamp and spread them across the table. The documents smelled like age and dust, and secrets. The first sheet was official. State of New York, adoption record. It named Judith Williams as the adoptive parent of Rachel Marie Carter, age 6 months. But what made Rachel's stomach twist was the next page. It was a handwritten confession, a letter Judith must have written years ago, then hidden for this moment. "My Rach, I never wanted you to learn this from anyone else. You were not abandoned. You were sold. I found you through a social worker who told me the truth. Your birth parents were lost to addiction. They took money from people who promised to place their baby. One of the signatures on your release belongs to someone you've already met. Vivian's husband. He brokered the deal. He was your uncle." Rachel's hands froze. The words blurred before her eyes. Vivian's husband. Her uncle. Her chest tightened, a deep ache spreading through her ribs. She flipped the page. There was a photocopy of the signature. Thomas C. Hayes, Vivian's husband. The same man who used to ruffle her hair when she was a kid. Who used to joke, "You're lucky Judith picked you up, kiddo." Now she understood the tone behind it. The disgust he hid under fake humor. He hadn't been mocking Judith. He'd been mocking her. Rachel stood so suddenly her chair screeched across the floor. Her pulse thundered in her ears. She paced, back and forth, gripping the letter like it might vanish if she let go. Vivian had always hated her, always treated her like a stain on the family name. Now Rachel knew why. Because Rachel wasn't just Judith's adopted daughter. She was Vivian's blood, born from the same family tree that had tried to sell her for cash. Her knees buckled. She sat back down, trembling. "Oh, Mom," she whispered, voice cracking. "You knew." Tears blurred her vision. Judith had known all along, and still, she'd chosen love over revenge. Rachel covered her mouth and sobbed into her hands. The truth hurt worse than any insult. It hollowed her out from the inside. The next morning, she drove straight to Vivian's house. The gates opened automatically, the same gates that had once closed on her when she was thrown out. Vivian was sitting by the pool, drinking her morning coffee, pretending life hadn't changed. When she saw Rachel, her face tensed, but she smiled anyway. "Well, if it isn't the heiress herself." Rachel didn't smile. "We need to talk." Vivian sighed dramatically. "About what? Your next media stunt? Or are you here to gloat again?" Rachel walked closer, her voice low but steady. "About Thomas." Vivian's expression flickered. "What about him?" Rachel dropped the envelope on the table. The papers slid out. The adoption record, the confession, the signature. Vivian's hand froze mid-air. Rachel said softly, "You want to tell me why your husband signed the papers that sold me?" Vivian's lips parted, then closed. Her face went pale. "You don't understand." "No," Rachel cut in. "I understand perfectly. You hated me because every time you saw me, you remembered what your husband did. You remembered what you let happen." Vivian's voice rose, sharp and trembling. "He made mistakes. We both did. But Judith, she twisted everything." Rachel's voice stayed calm. "She saved me." Vivian's hand slammed down on the table. "She stole you." Rachel flinched at the venom in her tone. Vivian stood, her voice breaking. "You think Judith loved you? She took you to punish me, to make me watch her raise the child I couldn't have. She flaunted you. That was her revenge. You're mine by blood, Rachel, and I hate that she got to raise you." The words cut deeper than knives. Rachel's chest tightened. "You hate me because she loved me." Vivian's eyes burned. "Because she replaced me. She was always the good one, the successful sister, the hero. But she couldn't give me what I wanted most. So she took you, my brother's shame, and made you her trophy." Rachel shook her head slowly, tears welling in her eyes. "You really think love was a competition?" Vivian laughed bitterly. "Love? Judith didn't love you. She pitied you, just like everyone else will when they find out where you really came from." Rachel's hand tightened on the envelope. "You won't get that chance." Vivian smirked. "What, you'll pay me to keep quiet?" Rachel's voice was calm but cold. "I'll pay you nothing. Because you've already sold me once. That's all you'll ever get." Vivian's smirk faltered. Rachel turned to leave. Her hands shook, but her steps didn't. Vivian called after her, voice breaking. "You think you're better than me, don't you?" Rachel stopped at the door, her back still turned. "No," she said quietly. "I just chose to be different." Then she walked away. The drive back to the city was a blur of tears and silence. Rachel's mind kept replaying Vivian's words. "You're mine by blood. Every mile felt heavier. Every breath hurt. She didn't even realize where she was driving until she saw the old stone building at the end of the street. The one with the wooden sign. The Judith Williams Home for Children. The orphanage Judith had built years ago. The one Rachel used to visit every Christmas. She parked outside and sat on the steps, her head in her hands. The truth had cracked something inside her, not her strength, but her sense of identity. Everything she thought she knew about love, family, and belonging had been rewritten in a few sheets of paper. Her mother had chosen her. Out of pity, maybe at first, but then out of love. Real, fierce, unconditional love. And the people who shared her blood? They had traded her for cash. The thought made her stomach turn. The sky began to darken. Rain started to fall. Slow, cold drops that clung to her hair and lashes. She didn't move. Then she heard footsteps. Noah. He sat down beside her without saying a word. He didn't ask why she was there or why she was crying. He just waited. Finally, she whispered, "She raised me with love I didn't deserve." Noah looked at her gently. "You deserved all of it. You just didn't deserve them." Her lips trembled. She knew everything, Noah. She knew what they did. And she still loved me anyway. He nodded. "That's what real love is, Rachel. It doesn't erase the pain. It makes surviving it possible." Rachel let out a broken laugh. "I thought revenge would make me strong. But it just made me tired." Noah smiled softly. "That's because revenge is loud. Strength is quiet." Rachel leaned against his shoulder, the rain falling around them. For the first time in months, she didn't feel alone. She closed her eyes and whispered, "I wish she were here." "She is," Noah said. "Every time you choose kindness when you could have chosen hate, she's there." Rachel didn't answer. She just breathed. For the first time since Judith's death, the silence felt peaceful. That night, Rachel went home and sat at her desk. The papers were still spread out. The adoption record, the confession, the truth. She took out her phone and started typing. One message, one name. Eli. Because some ghosts refuse to stay buried. Rachel stared at Eli's name glowing on her screen. His message was short, desperate, and slimy. "We need to talk. I know things about your family. If you don't want me to sell them, we can make a deal." She read it twice, jaw tightening. He hadn't changed at all. Not an ounce of guilt. Not even shame. She typed back 2 words. "Go ahead." Then she locked her phone and walked to the window. The city shimmered outside, glittering lights against the dark. She thought of Judith again, the woman who taught her that love wasn't something to be begged for or bought. A ping broke the silence. Another message from Eli. "Wait! You don't get it. I already sent some to a tabloid. They're interested. Pay me $50,000. I'll stop the rest." Rachel felt something strange then. Not fear. Calm, cold, perfect calm. She opened her laptop, found the screenshots he'd sent, the voice notes, the threats, and attached them all to an email addressed to one of the biggest news outlets herself. The subject line was simple. "Full story, unedited, from Rachel Williams." She hit send. Within an hour, Eli's exclusive turned into his downfall. The article headline read, "Ex-fiancé of billionaire heiress exposed in blackmail scandal." By morning, Eli's arrest was everywhere. Fraud, extortion, harassment. His smirk, the one she used to think was charming, stared back from mugshots. Rachel didn't feel vindicated. She just felt done. The revenge, the anger, the fights. They'd lost their flavor. What she wanted now was quiet.
At 1 a.m, my only daughter collapsed at my gate. Her husband had hit her over his mistress. Then I swung into action. At 1 a.m, loud banging echoed through the compound. When the gate opened, her only daughter collapsed at the doorstep, bruised, shaking, and barely able to speak. Through choked sobs, she revealed the truth. Her husband had hit her over his mistress. In that instant, the mother's pain turned into resolve. She swung into action, and what followed would shake everyone involved. This is the story of a daughter's suffering, a mother's fury, and the night everything changed. What do you think happened next? Hello, family. Welcome back. Before we begin, I have a small but heartfelt request. Please subscribe. Your support is what keeps these stories alive. Every time you click that button, you're helping us share voices that would otherwise be forgotten and stories that deserve to be heard. And in the comments, tell us where you're watching from, because together we are not just telling stories, we are keeping hope alive. It was exactly 1:03 a.m. when the banging began. 3 hard, desperate hits against the metal gate. Bang, bang, bang. Margaret Daniels shot up from bed, her heart thundering in her chest. For a moment she froze, listening. The night was still except for the frantic sound at the gate. She grabbed her robe and hurried outside, the cold air biting her skin. "Who's there?" she called, her voice trembling. No answer, just another bang. She unlocked the gate, and the moment it creaked open, a body fell forward, collapsing at her feet. It was her daughter. "Emily!" she screamed, falling to her knees. "Oh my God, Emily!" Emily Thompson, her only child, lay there barefoot, her nightdress torn, her hair dishevelled, her face swollen. Blood streaked her lips. One of her eyes was almost shut from the swelling. She was shaking uncontrollably, her breathing short and shallow. "Mama!" Emily gasped, her voice barely a whisper. He hit me." Margaret's world tilted. "What? Who? Victor?" Emily tried to nod, but burst into tears instead, clutching her stomach as she groaned in pain. Margaret gathered her in her arms, her tears mixing with her daughter's. "My baby, my God, what did he do to you?" Emily tried to speak, but her words broke into sobs. I caught him, Mama. With her, with Sophie. I only asked him why. Just asked him." Her body shook harder. "He lost it. He said I embarrassed him. He pushed me against the wall, kicked me, said I should learn to shut my mouth." Margaret's hands trembled as she felt the bruises on Emily's arms. There were so many. "Jesus, Emily, we have to get you to the hospital." She screamed for the gatekeeper to bring the car keys, like half dragging, half carrying her daughter to the car. The 10-minute drive felt endless. Emily kept fading in and out, whispering half words, apologizing as if she'd done something wrong. "I didn't mean to shout, Mama. I swear I didn't. He just snapped." "Don't talk, sweetheart," Margaret said, holding her hand tightly. "You'll be fine. I promise you'll be fine." But deep inside she was shaking, because she'd seen that look before, when her late husband used to lose his temper. And she had sworn her daughter would never live through the same thing. At the hospital, nurses rushed to take Emily inside. Margaret followed them into the emergency ward, refusing to sit down. After what felt like hours, the doctor came out, a young man with tired eyes and a tone that said he'd seen this too many times. "She's stable for now," he said carefully, "but she has bruised ribs and internal bleeding. It's not her first injury, Mrs. Daniels." Margaret frowned. "What do you mean, not her first?" He hesitated, then sighed. "We found older bruises, some nearly healed, some fresh. It suggests a pattern of abuse." Margaret's hand went to her mouth. "My God!" The words sank deep, burning her chest. She'd known something wasn't right for months, but Emily had always smiled, always said, "I'm fine, Mama. Victor loves me." Margaret's knees weakened. "Can I see her?" The doctor nodded and led her in. Emily lay on the bed, an IV line in her arm, her face pale under the fluorescent light. Her lips quivered as she tried to smile. "Mama, don't cry," she whispered. "It's not as bad as it looks." Margaret sat by her side and brushed her hair back. "He could have killed you." Emily's eyes welled with tears. "He didn't mean to, Mama. He gets angry sometimes. He says I make him feel small." Margaret stared at her daughter, stunned. "You're making excuses for him?" Emily's lips trembled. "I just want peace. He loves me, Mama. He loses control." "Loses control?" Margaret snapped, her voice breaking. "Emily, you're covered in bruises. He broke your ribs. That's not love." Emily turned her face away, silent tears streaming down. Margaret's heart shattered. Her daughter, her bright, kind, once confident girl, had become a shell of herself. A few hours later, as dawn crept in, footsteps echoed in the corridor. Victor Thompson arrived, tall, polished, and calm. He walked in carrying flowers. His shirt was crisp, his voice smooth, his face the perfect mask of concern. "Oh, Margaret," he said softly, "this is such a misunderstanding. Emily's been under so much stress lately. She overreacted again." Margaret's blood boiled. Overreacted? Victor sighed, stepping closer. You know how she gets emotional sometimes. We argued. She fell. I didn't mean for any of this. Fell? Margaret repeated slowly, standing to face him. Do you think I'm stupid, Victor? He placed a hand on his chest as if hurt. I love your daughter. You know I'd never harm her. Margaret's eyes narrowed. Then explain the handprint on her face. Explain the bruises on her ribs. He swallowed, then smiled faintly. I'm sure the doctors will confirm nothing serious. I'll handle her discharge. Margaret's stare was cold. You won't handle anything. But Victor only smiled, leaned over Emily's bed and whispered softly, You told your mother, didn't you? Emily flinched, fear flashing across her eyes. I didn't mean to. Shh. He brushed her cheek, but it wasn't affection, it was control. We'll talk later. Margaret stepped forward, step away from her. He turned and gave her that smooth, empty smile. Of course. Just don't make this harder than it already is, Margaret. You know how gossip spreads. He left without looking back. Margaret's hands were shaking, but her eyes were sharp now. She wasn't confused anymore. She'd seen who he really was. As the door closed, she noticed something. A faint lipstick stain on Victor's sleeve. Not Emily's shade. Later that morning, Margaret went home briefly to get fresh clothes for Emily. Her hands moved mechanically, packing nightwear, toiletries, but her mind was racing. Every flashback stabbed her heart. Victor at the wedding, charming and polite, his mother, Mrs. Thompson, calling her a woman of modest means, smiling like poison when she said, Emily's lucky we're accepting her into our family. Back then, Margaret had ignored it. She just wanted her daughter happy. Now she realized they'd never accepted her. They'd only tolerated her, until they owned her. When Margaret returned to the hospital, Emily was asleep. Victor was sitting beside her bed, scrolling through her phone. She froze at the door, watching silently. He wasn't texting, he was deleting, message after message. Margaret clenched her jaw. She didn't move. She didn't speak. She just watched him erase her daughter's truth one file at a time. Finally, he set the phone down, kissed Emily's forehead, and left. Margaret walked over slowly, picked up the phone, and opened it. All message threads were gone. Gone. Her eyes filled with tears. Not just of anger, but of realization. He'd been covering his tracks all along. She looked at Emily sleeping and whispered, He won't get away with this. I swear on your father's grave, he won't. That evening, Emily woke up, her voice weak. Mama, please don't be angry with him. He said he'd change. He cried, Mama. He said he's sorry. Margaret swallowed hard. Emily, baby, you're protecting a man who almost destroyed you. Emily turned away. I just don't want people to talk. I don't want to be that woman, divorced, pitied, whispered about. Her voice broke. They'll say I failed my marriage. Margaret sat down beside her, gripping her hand tight. You didn't fail. He did. You didn't break anything. He did. Don't you ever let shame make you defend evil. Emily started crying quietly, and Margaret just held her. The monitors beeped softly. Outside, the world moved on, unaware of the war happening inside that hospital room. A war between love and fear, between truth and silence. That night, Margaret sat in her car outside the hospital, staring at the steering wheel. She'd spent her life teaching her daughter to be kind, patient, forgiving. But tonight, she realized something cruel. Those same lessons had made her easy to hurt. Margaret wiped her tears and took a long breath. She wasn't going to scream. She wasn't going to beg. She was going to think, plan, and wait. Because one thing she knew for sure, when a mother's love turns into fury, even the strongest man will tremble. If you haven't subscribed yet, we'd love for you to join our community by hitting the subscribe button. Through our stories, we build hope and give a future to children and women who have been abused all over the world. Motivate us by subscribing and turning on your notification bell so you never miss a story that matters. Also, let us know in the comments, where are you watching from? And how did this story speak to you? It had been 4 days since that night. 4 long, dragging days since Emily collapsed at her mother's gate. The bruises on her face were fading, but the ones inside her, those were getting darker. She barely spoke. She kept her phone close, staring at it like it might apologize to her. Every time it buzzed, she flinched. Every night, she dreamt she was still in that house, begging him to stop. Margaret watched her daughter sit by the window in silence, a cup of tea untouched on the table. The soft morning light made Emily look fragile, like glass about to crack. Sweetheart, Margaret said gently, you don't have to keep staring at that phone. He doesn't deserve another thought. Emily didn't look up. He said he'd come by today, just to talk. Margaret's chest tightened. He what? Emily turned, her voice small. Mama, please. He said he's sorry. He said he wants to fix things. Margaret felt her stomach twist. Emily, you almost died because of him. I know. Emily whispered, her lips trembling. But what if? What if I made him this way? What if I pushed him too far? Margaret froze. The words were like knives. Emily, she said slowly, don't you ever say that again. You didn't push him. You didn't deserve this. He made his own choice. Emily shook her head, crying softly. He said I embarrass him in front of people, that I talk too much, that I act like I'm better than him. Margaret's hands curled into fists. You are better than him. But Emily didn't believe it. The guilt had already eaten deep into her. By afternoon, a black SUV pulled up outside. Victor. He walked in with 2 gift bags in hand, one filled with flowers, the other with jewellery. He wore a gentle smile that could fool a crowd. Margaret, he greeted warmly, as if nothing had happened. You look well, and Emily, my darling, you look beautiful. Margaret didn't respond. She just folded her arms and stared at him. Emily, on the other hand, seemed nervous, shrinking slightly as he approached. I brought you lilies, he said softly, setting the flowers down. Your favourite, right? Emily nodded slowly, her eyes lowering. He took her hand, brushing his thumb across her knuckles. You know I didn't mean to hurt you, baby. You know I love you. We just had a bad night. Everyone fights. Margaret cut in sharply. You nearly broke her ribs, Victor. That's not a fight. That's an assault. Victor sighed, looking pained. Mrs. Daniels, please. I understand your anger, but Emily's been under pressure lately. Sometimes she gets emotional and says things she doesn't mean. Margaret's eyes flared. Don't twist this. But Victor's tone stayed calm, patient, almost rehearsed. You know how people exaggerate things when they're upset. Emily's always been sensitive. Emily's lips parted in protest, but the words didn't come out. Margaret stepped forward. Get out. Victor gave her a polite smile. I just came to make peace. You know the neighbourhood's talking already. Let's not give them a story. That line hit like a dagger. Let's not give them a story. Margaret realised then he wasn't apologising. He was protecting his image. As he walked toward the door, he turned and added smoothly, Oh, and Margaret? Maybe keep this between family. It's embarrassing for everyone. When he left, the silence in the house was suffocating. Emily began to sob quietly. He's right, Mama. People will talk. They'll call me dramatic. Margaret knelt before her and cupped her face. Let them talk, baby. You're still standing. That's all that matters. But inside, Margaret was boiling. Victor's control wasn't physical alone. It was psychological. He'd broken Emily's will. 2 days later, the whispers began. Neighbours stopped Margaret on her way to the store. I heard Emily had a nervous breakdown, one woman said softly. Another added, some people just don't know how to handle marriage pressure. Margaret realised what was happening. Victor had flipped the story. He was painting Emily as unstable, a hysterical woman making false claims, and people were eating it up. Even the pastor's wife stopped by one afternoon saying, you know, men need respect. Maybe Emily just needs to submit more. Margaret almost slammed the door in her face. That night, Margaret went through Emily's old belongings, letters, photos, things she'd packed before marriage. She found a notebook tucked inside an old purse. Inside were pages of notes, small things Emily had written over the past year. He checks my phone every night. He made me quit my job. He says my friends are a bad influence. I don't recognise myself anymore. Margaret's tears fell freely. Her daughter had been crying for help long before that night, and she hadn't seen it. She flipped through the last page. If I disappear, tell Mama it wasn't an accident. The words shattered her. The next day, Margaret decided to act. Quietly, carefully. She went to a small diner across town and met a man named Daniel Reed, a private investigator referred by an old friend. I want you to dig into Victor Thompson, she said firmly. Everything, his business, his finances, his family. Daniel nodded. You think he's hiding something? I know he is, she replied. I just don't know what yet. Meanwhile, Emily was trying to rebuild herself, but every call from Victor dragged her back. He'd call late at night, saying things like, Baby, you're overreacting. I was drunk, you know I love you. You're the one who provoked me. The next day, he'd send flowers and soft messages. You're my world. No one understands me like you. It was a cycle. Pain, guilt, apology, repeat. Emily started to believe it again. The manipulation was working. Margaret saw it in her eyes, the same pattern she'd once lived through with Emily's father years ago. The same fear, the same confusion. A week later, Daniel called. "I found something," he said. "You might want to sit down." He handed her a folder thick with documents. Victor's company wasn't clean. He'd been moving money around through shell accounts, using Emily's inheritance as collateral for fake contracts. Margaret's head spun. He's been stealing from her? More than that, Daniel said. He's laundering money through a fake charity registered under Emily's name. Margaret's hands shook. Dear God. She flipped through the photos. Victor with his so-called secretary, Sophie, a young woman, pretty, poised, and always close by his side. At first glance, she looked harmless, but in one picture she was laughing while Victor's hand rested on her thigh. Another showed them at a private dinner, too intimate to be professional. Margaret clenched her jaw. That's the mistress. Daniel hesitated. There's more. Her real name isn't Sophie Miller. It's Sophie Thompson. Margaret blinked. What? She's his half-sister. The words hung in the air, heavy and grotesque. Half-sister? Daniel nodded. Same father, different mothers. Their family had a messy split years ago. His father left Sophie's mother for Victor's mother. Rumour is Sophie's mother died broken, bitter. Sophie was raised to hate Victor's family. Looks like they're working together now. Margaret felt sick. You're saying the affair is fake? I think it started as revenge, Daniel said. But it's not clear what their endgame is yet. Money? Maybe. Or destroying Emily's name. Margaret sat there in silence, staring at the file. Everything made sense now. The control, the lies, the manipulation. Emily wasn't just married to an abuser. She was caught in a family plot. That night, Margaret went home to find Emily sitting in the dark, staring at her reflection. Do you think I'm crazy, Mama? She asked softly. Margaret placed the file on the table and knelt beside her. No, baby. You're not crazy. You're trapped in the perfect lie. Emily looked up, confused. What do you mean? Margaret's eyes filled with tears. He's been stealing from you, lying to you, using you. And that woman, Sophie, she's not just his mistress. She's his half-sister. Emily's face went pale. That's impossible. Margaret shook her head. I have proof. Emily covered her mouth, shaking. So all this time, I was just part of their game? Margaret's voice broke. Yes, baby, but the game ends now. Emily sobbed into her mother's chest, her body trembling violently. I loved him, Mama. I gave him everything. Margaret held her close. And that's why he thought he could destroy you. But he forgot who raised you. She stroked her daughter's hair, her voice steady. He broke you in his house. Now we'll break him in his. That night, Margaret sat alone at the table, staring at the photos. Victor smiling, Sophie smirking. Her hands were steady now. No tears, no fear, just one thought. They built their empire on lies. Started with whispers. At first, small, subtle, easy to ignore. But whispers grow fast, especially when they come from people with money and influence. Within days, Margaret began to hear them everywhere. At the grocery store, at church, even from neighbours who used to adore Emily. Such a shame, one woman said behind her. Victor tried to help her, but you can't help someone that's unstable. I heard she accused him to get attention, another murmured. Poor man, such a patient husband. Margaret stopped walking. Her blood turned cold. They believed him. Every lie, every carefully crafted story. Victor and his mother had done it. They'd flipped the narrative. Now Emily wasn't the victim anymore. She was the villain. When Margaret reached home, she found Emily sitting on the living room floor, surrounded by newspapers. Her hands trembled as she flipped through them. One headline read, Businessman Victor Thompson speaks on false allegations, says he forgives his wife. Below it was his photo, looking calm, humble, and heartbreakingly sincere. Emily's voice was barely a whisper. He forgives me, Mama. Margaret froze. Forgives you? For what? Emily's eyes filled with tears. For embarrassing him, for what I said. Margaret knelt down beside her. Sweetheart, don't you see what he's doing? He's turning people against you. Emily clutched the paper. But he said he doesn't hate me anymore. Maybe I should just apologize publicly. Make it go away. Margaret felt her chest tighten. Apologize after everything he's done? Emily looked lost, broken. I just want peace, Mama. I can't take the stares, the calls, the messages. Everyone's calling me crazy. Margaret wrapped her arms around her daughter, tears falling silently. Victor wasn't just destroying Emily's name, he was destroying her mind. A few days later, Margaret went to confront him. Victor was at his office, surrounded by his loyal staff. The room smelled of arrogance and money. He smiled when she entered. "Mrs. Daniels? What a surprise." "Cut the act," she snapped. "You're ruining her life, Victor. Stop this before I destroy you." He leaned back in his chair, relaxed. "Destroy me? With what exactly?" Margaret's voice shook. "I know what you've been doing. The charity, the stolen money, Sophie." Victor smirked. "You have no proof, and even if you did, no one would believe you. I'm a respected man. You're just a bitter old widow clinging to a fantasy." Margaret's hands balled into fists. "You're playing with fire." Victor stood, walked over slowly, and said in a low, cutting voice, "You raised a weak daughter, not a wife. You taught her to cry, not to fight. Don't blame me because she can't handle reality." The slap came before she realized her hand had moved. Victor didn't flinch, he just smiled. "You'll regret that." Margaret turned and walked out, shaking. But his words lingered, poison in her veins. That night, Emily sat on her bed, staring at old photos of her wedding day. She looked radiant, happy, in love. "How did I become this person?" she whispered. "I used to laugh, Mama. I used to believe people were good." Margaret brushed her hair back gently. "You're still a good baby, you just trusted the wrong devil." Emily tried to smile light, but her voice broke. "Maybe if I'd been stronger, he wouldn't have done this." Margaret felt her throat tighten. "Don't blame yourself." But Emily just turned away. "I don't even know who I am anymore." 2 days later, Daniel, the private investigator, called again. "Margaret, I found something. And it's bad." They met at a small park, away from prying eyes. He handed her another file, thick, heavy, damning. "These are bank transfers," he said. "Victor and Sophie are laundering money through that fake charity in Emily's name. Millions, Margaret. They've even used her social security number to register offshore accounts." Margaret felt dizzy. "They're using her to commit crimes?" "Yes, but that's not all." He hesitated before continuing. "You remember Emily's godfather, Mr. Harrison, the one who died in that supposed car accident 3 years ago?" Margaret nodded slowly. "Yes, he was her father's best friend." Daniel's voice lowered. "He was also Victor's father's business partner. I found evidence that Victor's mother pressured him to sign over company shares before the accident. He refused. A week later, he was dead." Margaret's hands went cold. "You're saying they had something to do with it?" Daniel nodded grimly. "And Victor inherited everything right after. There's something very rotten in that family." Margaret gripped the folder so tightly her knuckles turned white. "They took everything from my daughter and they'll answer for it." She tried to report it, to the authorities, to a lawyer she trusted. But doors kept closing. Files went missing. People suddenly stopped returning calls. Victor's reach was longer than she'd imagined. His connections in business and politics kept him untouchable. And all the while, Emily was sinking deeper. One night, Margaret found her daughter sitting outside in the rain, barefoot, soaked, staring at nothing. "Emily," she cried, rushing to her. "What are you doing out here?" Emily's lips trembled. "I can't stop hearing his voice, Mama. Even when he's not here, I hear him calling me useless, stupid, crazy." She looked up, eyes hollow. "He's right, Mama. Maybe I'm crazy." Margaret dropped to her knees beside her. "Don't you say that. You're not crazy. You're hurt, you're scared, but you are not crazy." Emily broke down, shaking violently in her mother's arms. That night, Margaret stayed awake by her bedside, afraid to close her eyes. She could feel her daughter's pain, the kind that doesn't leave bruises, but leaves scars no one else can see. The next morning, Margaret woke up to the sound of running water. She called out, "Emily?" No answer. Panic gripped her chest. She rushed to the bathroom and froze. The tub was half filled. Emily was lying beside it, an empty pill bottle in her hand. "Emily!" Margaret's scream tore through the house. She dragged her daughter out, shaking her, sobbing, begging her to wake up. "Please, baby, don't do this to me. Not you. Not like this." She called 911 with trembling hands, pressing against Emily's chest, counting compressions through tears. By the time the paramedics arrived, Margaret was covered in water and tears. They managed to revive Emily, but barely. At the hospital, Margaret sat beside her again, gripping her hand tightly. When Emily finally opened her eyes, she whispered weakly, "I'm sorry, Mama. I just wanted it to stop." Margaret cried harder. "You don't say sorry for surviving, baby. You hear me? You stay. You live." But something inside her shifted that night. The last trace of fear was gone. She realized there would be no justice unless she took it herself. When she returned home, she went through every drawer, every file, every box of memories she'd once stored away. She didn't know what she was looking for, only that she'd find it. And then she did. An old USB drive tucked inside a photo album from Emily's wedding day. Margaret plugged it into her laptop. The screen flickered to life, showing raw, unedited footage of the wedding ceremony. There was laughter, toasts, the clinking of glasses. Then, an off-camera conversation accidentally recorded near the microphone stand. It was Victor's mother's voice, cold, sharp. You think Margaret suspects anything?" Another woman's voice, unfamiliar, answered, "She never will. She still thinks her husband's death was an accident." Margaret's breath caught. Victor's mother chuckled. Of course it wasn't. He was the only obstacle. Once he was gone, Victor's path was clear. Margaret froze, hand trembling over the mouse. Her husband, Emily's father, the man she'd mourned for years, killed. Not by fate, not by accident, by them. Her body went numb. The room blurred. She felt the walls closing in, the memories of that funeral flashing back. The coffin, the condolences, the lies. They'd destroyed her husband, then her daughter, then tried to erase her family's name completely. Margaret shut the laptop and sat still for a long time. When she finally stood, her face was pale, her voice steady. "This ends now." Her reflection in the window didn't look like her anymore. It looked like a storm, quiet, but deadly. The invitation arrived in a gold envelope, heavy paper, fancy lettering, the kind that screamed money. It was for Victor Thompson's 40th birthday gala. Margaret stared at it for a long time before she smiled, a slow, deliberate smile that reached her eyes for the first time in a year. It had been 12 months since the night she found that wedding footage, the night she learned that the people who destroyed her daughter had also taken her husband's life. Since then, she hadn't raged, she hadn't screamed, she'd planned, quietly, carefully, patiently. Now, the plan was ready. That evening, the city buzzed with excitement. The grand ballroom of the Crescent Hotel shimmered with chandeliers and expensive laughter. Reporters lined the red carpet, snapping photos of wealthy guests, socialites, and Victor himself. Charming as ever, a king in his kingdom. He looked untouchable in his black tuxedo, smiling that perfect smile. Beside him stood Sophie, his so-called secretary, radiant in a silver dress. His mother, regal and composed, watched proudly from the sidelines. They'd won, or so they thought. Then the murmurs began. A car pulled up to the entrance, cameras turned. Out stepped Margaret Daniels, dressed in an elegant black gown that shimmered under the lights, simple but commanding. Beside her walked Emily. She looked fragile still, but stronger, her shoulders straight, her eyes steady. The crowd whispered, "Isn't that Victor's wife? I thought she was in a hospital. Why is she here?" Victor froze mid-laugh when he saw them. His jaw tightened, but he quickly regained composure. "Emily, Margaret, what a surprise!" Margaret smiled politely. "We wouldn't miss your big day, Victor. After all, family should always be together for special occasions." Her tone was calm, but her eyes sharp as glass. Inside, the ballroom gleamed. Waiters moved gracefully between tables. A jazz band played softly in the background. Margaret and Emily took a seat near the front where everyone could see them. Victor leaned toward his mother, whispering harshly, "What are they doing here?" His mother's lips tightened. "Keep smiling. Don't cause a scene." But Margaret noticed. She noticed everything. As the night went on, speeches were made. Guests toasted to Victor's success, to his clean image, to his charitable heart. Every compliment was a lie, but that's what made the moment so perfect. Finally, the host announced, "And now, a special surprise. Victor's mother will say a few words before the family toast." Margaret rose quietly from her seat. "Actually," she said, her voice clear and smooth, "if you don't mind, I'd like to make a toast myself." The room stilled. Victor's smile faltered. "Margaret, this isn't—" She raised a hand, silencing him. "Don't worry, dear. I'll be brief." The guests turned toward her, intrigued. Margaret walked to the centre of the stage, her heels echoing across the marble floor. Emily followed a few steps behind, her presence soft but strong. Margaret reached for the microphone. "Good evening, everyone." Her tone was polite, almost warm. "We're so happy to be here to celebrate Victor. He's always been such a remarkable man. So charming, so persuasive, so good at keeping up appearances." A few guests chuckled awkwardly. Victor's mother's face tightened. "Margaret, that's enough." But Margaret continued, "You see, when a man like Victor smiles, the world believes it. He has a gift. He makes lies sound like love." Gasps rippled through the room. Victor stood up, his voice sharp. "Margaret, stop this nonsense right now." Margaret smiled calmly. "Oh, I will, right after this." She nodded to someone in the back. The lights dimmed. The projector screen came to life. At first, people thought it was a slideshow, photos of Victor and Emily's wedding. Laughter filled the room. Then the audio began, Victor's voice. Not the smooth public one, the real one. "You think you can leave me? You're nothing without me, Emily. You hear me? Nothing!" A slap, a cry. "Say it! Say you're nothing!" The laughter stopped instantly. The room went silent. Another clip played. This time, Victor's voice again, talking to Sophie. "She'll never leave. She's too scared. And once the money's in, she won't have anything left to run with." Sophie's nervous laugh followed. "You're horrible," Victor chuckled. "No, darling, I'm smart." The screen flickered again. Images of bank statements, documents, signatures showing the fake charity, the stolen inheritance. And then came the final clip. Victor's mother's recorded voice from that wedding footage. She still thinks her husband's death was an accident. Of course it wasn't. You could hear Margaret's voice crack from somewhere in the back of the room. The same pain she'd felt that day echoed again now, but this time it wasn't silence that followed. It was shock, gasps, murmurs, whispers turning to outrage. Someone shouted, "Is this real?" Another voice, "That's his mother." Victor lunged toward the stage. "Turn it off! Now!" But the damage was done. Margaret looked straight at him, calm, unflinching. "It's over, Victor." At that moment, uniformed officers stepped through the ballroom doors. Margaret had made sure of it. She'd given them everything, the documents, the recordings, the names. Sophie tried to slip out the side door, but an officer blocked her path. Victor's mother sank into her chair, face ashen, her empire collapsing in real time. Victor shouted, "You think this will stick? You think you can ruin me?" Margaret tilted her head slightly. "You already ruined yourself. I'm just the one holding up the mirror." The press went wild. Cameras flashed. Reporters yelled questions as the officers led Victor and Sophie away in handcuffs. Victor turned once toward Emily, eyes filled with venom. "You'll regret this." Emily's voice, for the first time in a long while, was steady. "I already did." The entire ballroom watched as the man who once controlled everything was dragged out like a criminal. Margaret turned to the guests, all those who'd whispered and judged, all those who'd believed the lies. Her voice carried across the silent room. "When you raise your daughter to forgive endlessly, you teach her to die slowly." No one moved. No one breathed. The words hit like a thunderclap, sharp, true, unforgettable. She turned to Emily, who was standing tall beside her, tears glistening but unbroken. They clasped hands, the bond between them stronger than any scar. The room erupted into noise, reporters shouting, guests murmuring, but Margaret and Emily just walked out together, heads high. For once, the world saw who the real victims were. In the weeks that followed, the truth spread everywhere. Victor and Sophie's crimes made headlines. Their empire crumbled. Their accounts were frozen. Their reputations gone. Victor's mother suffered a breakdown. Her name, once associated with prestige, became a curse whispered in business circles. And Emily, sweet, fragile Emily, finally began to breathe again. She went to therapy week after week, learning how to live without fear. One day she told her mother, "I want to start something, a place for women like me, a foundation." Margaret smiled. "Then let's do it, and this time no one will silence you." They named it the Dawn Foundation, a name that meant something new after so much darkness. Months later, on a quiet morning, Margaret sat on her porch as the sun rose. The sky was streaked with gold and pink. Birds sang softly in the distance. She sipped her tea slowly, watching the light spill across the earth. It was over. She didn't feel triumph. Not exactly. Just peace. Emily stepped outside, still in her robe, her smile gentle. "Couldn't sleep again?" Margaret shook her head. "No, just thinking." "About what?" Emily asked softly. Margaret's eyes stayed on the horizon. "About how truth doesn't destroy people, it only exposes what was already rotten." Emily leaned against her shoulder. "Thank you for fighting for me, Mama." Margaret placed a hand over hers. I didn't destroy them, she whispered. I only gave truth a voice. They sat in silence, watching the sunrise, the world quiet again, because in the end, that's all Margaret had wanted, for her daughter to live without fear. Evil thrives in silence. But the day a mother stands up, even lies tremble.